slides to say, what are we going to do next? So it was fantastic that you all came and listened, but how can we proceed? So I think it was just also to explain, we like a bit of an acronym. This was what it originally stood for, if you've ever wondered, but I just think the word disco is cool, so that's what we're going with. So when we first started a long time ago, we didn't have any kind of money or anything, and Fiona was going to set up a clinic and I was going to help her. So we actually needed to have a registrar and someone to help. So we got lots of money from the National Children's Hospital, which is Tala. And they gave us money and that started us off doing the clinic. So the reason we keep calling it research is because we had to tell them that we were doing lots of research to make sure that the clinic was still funded. And that's how we've always done it. So when you hear us talking about PhD students, what we're really talking about is someone like Rob who comes to clinic every week, checks all the results and does that. That's really what it's about. But on the side, we're publishing. And I think Orla kind of exemplified that if you don't publish it, you didn't do it. I know that, and that's how we disseminate. And then sometimes even when we go to our colleagues and say, this is really important, they kind of need the publication. So if you're hearing us sounding too research heavy, it's more that we have to write it down. That's and we all really love doing that, not. And so does everyone. And I think our first speaker was so inspiring about research that I'm going to have to get him to talk to anyone who's doing a PhD or writing anything, because filling that blank page is hard. But this is what we want to do. Is I suppose we wanted to develop research, and it's more just to implement guidelines to actually get the best evidence to understand what we're doing, so we actually do it correctly. We really want families and people who have Down syndrome to be involved in the research, because they're the only people who really know. And you're all the only people who actually really know what's going on. So that's really important. And all of us just want to make everything better. Now, I know this is very health oriented today. And these are the names. We had lots of different people over the years who are now, as we heard. And these are another group of people who all did PhDs, but who are all medical doctors or who are in occupational therapy and nursing, who just did their degrees in the clinic. So they created a guideline or some recommendation. Sorry, we just love acronyms. No project is called by a person's name. It has to be Diamond or Daisy or Dream or Disco or Dragonfly, so that we understand what we're talking about. But that's just to show that that's how we've developed it. But today, like, we were so lucky that we had Orla Franklin, we had Joanne Balfe, we had Beth, and I'll tell you how Beth started working with us in a minute. And then Ross. And I think Ross just kind of exemplified. I really do want to, actually, I wish I'd just taped it, because when I'm trying to inspire someone to write, like he just said everything correctly. And then Rob and Fiona, and of course, Andrew. So thanks for helping us. So it makes a huge difference. And even standing there unexpectedly having to talk in front of this group. And you can see I wasn't doing a great job of even putting the computer on. So I'd love to have been able to do that at your age. And today we kind of covered some of the aspects, but already in the room I saw we've got our professor of occupational therapy, we've speech and language therapy, we've rheumatologists, we've all of you. So we actually could expand and do this again. We've so many other people who are really involved with our group. We really want to kind of hear everybody's voice, and then kind of implement everything into clinical practice. Again, I can't claim that I wrote these slides. Thank you, Beth. But in the future, I suppose we don't want to, everything that keeps coming up today is lifespan. I suppose I'm trying to see how can we, if you have a diagnosis of any, of kind of any issues during pregnancy, if you've a diagnosis of any issues all the way through childhood into adulthood, how do we talk to families? How do we kind of make the pathway smooth so that everyone's on the same path? And I think at the moment, even from what you're saying, is it feels like nobody's on the same path. So I suppose that's really important. Everyone has to be involved because everyone's interested and wants to help work together. And again, what's lucky now is funding agencies like the Health Research Board insist that we have families and young people with any condition that we're studying have to be involved, because you always feel a bit guilty. You're having to listen to me now talk, and I'm already feeling guilty, making people involved in things when they're busy. Like, you're all really busy and you don't necessarily want to do it. But sometimes when we're forced to do it, it actually makes us have to work together and we feel less guilty about contacting you. And I think then thinking about new treatments. So we talked about the immune system, but I think if anyone here has been on some of the calls with Down Syndrome Ireland recently, there are new therapies to treat the immune system. And they're really starting to go into clinical trials, and we just need to be ready. And that's what we're trying to set up. And that's not for everybody, but for some people. Again, we keep talking about publication, but we actually have to get it out there. But sometimes we get it out there, as you can see, I'm the one who forces Rob to make those graphs. So we don't want to force everyone to read those graphs. We think they're fascinating. I thought they were lovely, Rob. But and we have to show that he does something exotic. So that's why we get a bit carried away with the graphs. But I just think it's how do we translate that to everybody so everybody knows what path they're on as well. Okay, so, and we're doing loads of guidelines. So we're really lucky. We are actually very involved. And actually Fiona was the first person in our group to be involved with Down Syndrome Medical Interest Group in the UK. And she's been on their council for a long time, telling them how to run things correctly, which is great. And then we want to create people who are going to look after our children into the future. And who have expertise and know how to get the information. And that's really what we're doing. So we did do this in the past. This is how I met Beth, actually. So the Health Research Board gave us money to have 5 PhD students in a certain area. And this is babies who are very unwell at birth and require therapeutic hypothermia. And it's for this group of patients. And we had 5 PhD students in every different discipline, looking from brain to heart to lungs to every part of checking those babies. And Beth was the coordinator. And we haven't let her go since then. But it was because we got that funding that we were able to work together as a group, and we've created lots of guidelines and worked internationally with that group and trying to emotionally blackmail those people to continue working in that area. So I think that was one of the things Beth wanted to mention. And then other partners that have worked with Ireland now is, I think the Elevate project got 11 million euro between Science Foundation Ireland and the Cerebral Palsy Foundation from the US. And that has started a huge project in Ireland for developmental progress, understanding biomarkers. And actually, we've snuck in all our babies who have Down syndrome into the developmental program. And we're sneaking all the cardiac babies in as well, so that we use these programs for other things so that everybody gets the same service. So they've been helpful. So that these things are going on in the background. And I suppose Beth was saying, how do we harness that for children with Down syndrome? And this is how all of you can help. I suppose already today we had Ross presenting at an international conference or national conference, and we'll get him internationally, is every time we think about a research idea, we just have to check, is this actually worth doing? Is this going to make any difference? Are we writing this wrong? Is this not helpful? And I think therefore what would happen is when we're writing a proposal, we'd normally start with a group of kind of relevant people to start with. And I think on Saturday, actually, we've got a young person's advisory group starting for Ireland across lots of different conditions from heart, lung, brain, and they're actually starting on Saturday in UCD. So if anyone has any young people who'd like to be involved in that, just contact us. And they're going to do a lot of activities together, learn about research and how they can participate and how they can plan the research for the future. And just to make sure it's meaningful, sorry, I'm nearly finished. Another thing that we are doing that we'd love some more volunteers for is we were kind of saying, how do we decide what, we've mentioned so many things we want to study, but what are the priorities? How do we pick what we want to do first? So one of the things is the group that, and this was already mentioned, is the priority setting exercise. So you sit down with this expert group who are good at getting us to get consensus, because you can imagine we all have different priorities, and they get us to consensus about what are the top 10. And if you're interested in this kind of process online, if you just look up the James Lind Alliance, it's named after James Lind, who apparently decided that vitamin C was great for scurvy. So I know it's an esoteric name, but that's it. And we decide what's the 10 best things that we all think are going to be important, and we start working on them. So we're starting to do that, and we're working with a group from Perth who did it for young children, and now we're trying to do it for the whole lifespan and include lower and middle income countries as well, because they're often excluded from these. And then this is, I shouldn't be talking, this is Beth has set up another program. I'm not going to do justice to, and it's a health awareness program for teens. So there's going to be a set of programs about like anatomy, what is your immune system, how to stop getting infections, how to protect yourself, that kind of thing, physical health, sleep and brain health. And it's going to be working together with teens and seeing what they want to prioritize as well. So that's coming up very soon. And she got a Civic Engagement Award from Trinity for that. I think, is that correct? Yeah. I'm just going to move on quickly. I think we've mentioned nearly everything I've spoken about, so I'm going to go on to the last slide. Oh, my last thing I was going to say was it is actually a privilege. Sorry, the mouse is working in a different place to my computer. It's such a privilege to be here, and we're so lucky. We didn't expect anyone to turn up today. So we're absolutely delighted you all did. And it's always lovely to actually meet everybody in clinic. And I recognize lots of faces here. You might not remember me, but so it's a privilege and lucky for us. And we're just interested in what you have to say and how we can work together and design new projects and make sure everyone has the exact same pathway. And so without further ado, I think it's time for refreshments.